Call to order the September 28th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the mission statement. We are committed to academic achievement and success for all students in a safe environment. In partnership with families in our community, our mission is to promote confidence, inspire a passion for learning, and prepare our students to become responsible global citizens. Approval of the revised agenda. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Questions or comments from interested citizens? Taryn, do we have anybody? No? Okay, and we don't have any responses. Approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 24th, 2022?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the September 12th minutes, 2022?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the revised BOE meeting calendar for 2022-2023 school year. The revision changes the October 26, 2022 meeting from a board workshop to the board retreat.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7.2, approval of resolution contract. Are there any questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay. Motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is this an item?
I don't have that here.
It's odd. Okay, so I apologize. Is that 7.3? Yeah. Approval of resolution contract, 7.3. May I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approval of resolution contract, 7.4. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of resolution contract, 7.5. Motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 We're up to personnel. Lori, would you like to cover anything?
Sure. I respectfully just request approval of the items listed under personnel, 8.1 through 8.12.
Are there any questions? Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, I got to get through all my pages. Okay. Number, business and financial. Patrick, do you have any updates?
No, I would just also respectfully request the approval of the items 9.1 through 9.7 under business and financial.
Motion?
Motion.
Sorry. Does anyone have any
I
questions?
have a question, and I don't know if I should have asked it at the last section, because I guess it kind of cross-references for the extra classroom activities. So my first question is, I know that we were previously having meetings with everybody for those extra classroom activities, as far as like timeline of the year and stuff, those are all still taking place?
When you say meetings, you mean describing how the year would roll out?
Yeah,
and the number
what
of
the
meetings
expectations
and when
were.
the meetings would occur?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I think what this action is doing, Stacy, is basically affirming which, groups and clubs are recognized by the board. It's like a
Okay.
good kind of practice to say these are approved and recognized and, authorized to collect money and do fundraising and expend money on trips and other kind of activities. That, I think, is more of an operational question. I don't know if Dr. Hassler would want to address that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Basically, I think you're kind of commingling two things. There's a training specific to, I think beyond what you're saying, there's a
Right.
training with regards to clubs specifically that are on this list, which have extra classroom accounts where they have to attend the training,
Yes.
which includes the management of the club account, as well as the necessary signatures and everything else. But separate from that, there is the expectations of all clubs, because not every club at the middle school, the high school, and, all of our elementary buildings have clubs also, which is separate about the frequency of the meetings of the clubs, number of students in the clubs, and things like that. So that's separate from this list. They're two different things.
Okay.
That makes sense,
But the
Wayne?
training meetings are still taking place, I think, at least once a year, if not twice.
Yeah, I think once a year.
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
it occurred, I think, late August, or
Yep.
it might even been the first couple of days of school where we had staff here. and,
Okay.
As far as I know, it went well, and, everyone that needed to be there was there, and
Okay.
received the training. Yeah.
I think that what Stacy is also talking about is that at one point when we were audited, there was some concern about how everything was operating. And so we instituted this practice where not me, but there's meetings with all of the faculty advisors that collect money to ensure that we're handling it properly. I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that continues, and I think that actually comes from Mrs. Mulrad's office.
Yes.
She and both, I think Michael
Mr.
Buffamante.
Buffamante, yeah.
They both work on that, so yes, that continues.
Okay. And then my other question with that is, I saw on here that there was a change in the person that's going to be for the Dreamers Club, that we approved one already back on 8/24. It was a different person. So now we have somebody new that we're approving on here?
I have to, there was somebody who was approved, but I believe, I have to double check on that. I believe that the club was split
Okay.
between two advisors. I think previously there were like co-advisors of the club.
Okay.
I think one advisor was previously approved, but the other advisor is no longer doing the position, so I believe that the person who is being appointed tonight is the second co-advisor to the
Okay.
club, but I gotta double check on that. I'll confirm
Okay.
that for you.
And then the one that's on,
Okay.
okay. And then I do know, because again, with the audit, we were trying to keep track of all of the descriptions and everything that are on the website.
Yep.
There is a club that's on the website for the high school, which I'm assuming at this point, the reason it's there is because it's a new club.
Voluntary.
And it's not board approved yet, but that is the crochet club.
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
that this is their first year as a club, which
Right, so
means there is no stipend.
There's no stipend, right. Basically,
Okay.
the way that it works is they would have to run a year, they would have to determine if there is in fact interest in the student body that would warrant the creation of the club.
Okay.
And then we would have to go through the full process of, if that ends up being the case, what the stipend would be. It would have to be included in next year's budget. They would have to, it'd have to be posted, people would have to apply for it, they would have to go through the full process.
Okay,
But that's only after it's determined that there
Is
is
enough
enough student
people,
interest.
right, for
Correct.
next
Which
year.
is the reason why it starts off on that voluntary
Okay.
basis. Correct.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion?
Motion?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is committees on special education and preschool special education. Can I have a motion?
Motion?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And Elsie, we are up to you. Update on district goals.
See if she brings, as soon as Prudence gets it up there. So while Prudence is doing that, I want to share with the community that the board, one of the board's responsibility is to work collaboratively with Cabinet and define what the goals are each year. And so last year, we defined 3 goals. And so how I'm going to begin this meeting is talking about the 3 goals that we defined, where we are with those 3 goals, and really talk about why these goals are important, because these goals keep us focused and continues on the work that we're supposed to do. So hopefully this works. Yeah. So last year's goal were 3 specific goals. The first is goal number 1, which is using data to improve student outcomes. What this means is, obviously, we have a plethora of data, but it's really important to have good data to be able to make good decisions. And so the first thing that we talked about last year was making sure that we had some sort of repository to put this data in, because those of us who use data, we use spreadsheets. And so we often have multiple spreadsheets that we take a look at, which become cumbersome and difficult to really get good data and make good decisions. So step number one for us was finding a central repository, which we did. It's called Unified Insight. It was called Hanuit. So the name has changed, but it's the same thing. The next thing that we wanted to do was really focus on our district-wide data teams. And last year, Dr. Hassler separated the two groups into elementary data teams and secondary data teams. And the focus of the teams was really to sit down and talk about, A, what data are we looking at? Different for elementary than it is for secondary. The second thing that we looked at is, how do we use this data? And how can we use this data every day to make decisions, talk about what we're going to be doing as far as budgeting. And so that was the focus that we had this past year, as well as certain protocols, what we would follow. Our second goal was family and community engagement. And you might remember that in February, we administered a survey. So it's really important for the community to know that this survey is important to us, because what we took from that was, what are the things that our community and our staff and our students feel are important? The first thing that we learned, and it's not unique to Monrore-Woodbury, was that students' behavior were impacting teaching and learning. Our students had just come back from the pandemic, and so those past 2 years really had an impact on their behavior. We saw a lot of anxiety, we saw students misbehaving, we saw an increase in students using and vaping. And so all of those things had an impact for everyone who is part of a school district. We had more students that were suspended than usual, and so that became an important piece as we talk about this year's goal. I just wanted people to know that that was certainly number one priority. The second priority, which came from our staff, was really talking about professional development. Yes, we have a very different student profile, and so their ask of us was, can you please make sure that you provide us with professional development so that we can help our students? Because oftentimes, right, we expect our teachers to be able to handle the diverse students that they have, but it's our responsibility, ours meaning the central office and administration, to provide that service to our teachers. And then last, it continues to be connections and communication with our families. So you'll see as I talk about this year's goals, how we incorporated that in, but that really came from the survey that we administered back in February. I will tell you that we administer that survey every other year. So the next time we're going to administer the survey is in 2024. It's either January or February. But our plan is not to use the same survey that we did, because we felt that it was very focused on certain things. And so our goal in the next year and a half is really to develop a survey that's geared towards our community and Monrore-Woodbury. Goal number 3 is the pre-referendum capital project. We've been talking about it. It's really the capital improvement project that we're going to be sharing with our community in a couple of weeks. Important dates there are December 6th is going to be the vote. We've already started. I know that Patrick has been working with Carol to talk about how we're going to get this information out to our community. It's really important that we do a stellar job of making sure that people understand why we're asking for what we're asking for. So those are the 3 goals that we had this past year. So goal number 1 is not going to change. As a matter of fact, I don't think goal number 1 is ever going to change, because improving student outcomes is always going to be one of our goals. But what you're going to see in the next slide is, how do we plan on doing it this year? So we use different language. We talked about what are the action steps and what are the deliverables, because it's really important when you talk about goals that you speak about, well, what are you going to do and what should the community accept? So number 1 is align the curriculum to state standards. That doesn't mean that it's not aligned, but you know that we went from Common Core to the next gen standards, and it's important for people to know that we're constantly looking at the standards and aligning them. The second thing is to develop common assessments. It's not that we don't have common assessments, but it's really going to be important for us not only to develop common assessments, but to administer in a very similar way. So if you give a common assessment and I take, it's 10 questions, and I'm a classroom teacher and I give 9 of those 10, then it's not the same test. So it's going to be really important as we start talking about common assessments that it's the same test administered in the same way unless the student has some accommodation. The next thing is schedule a curriculum night. We haven't done that in years. But I think it's really important, and that's part of the communication, that our staff and our administrators talk to our parents about what the expectations are, the academic expectations of our students. And then there's vertical and horizontal alignment, which is really just taking a look at what we teach and when we teach. More specifically is looking at the various curriculums. For example, if you're an elementary student and you're doing, I don't know, you're adding and subtracting. You may be doing something similar to that in another subject. So being able to cross-reference that, because again, if you're looking at it from a multidisciplinary view, then the student has a better opportunity of learning it. Updating our pacing guide. So let me explain what a pacing guide is. It lets the teachers know what they should be teaching and when, right? Because the pacing guide is going to be important as we look for common assessments. Fontes and Pinnell training. So that is a training that our elementary teachers get. It's an assessment that they give our students, but making sure that they're all giving it in the same manner. So it's called recalibration. And so we'll be doing that with our staff. And then formalize a process to review student progress throughout the year. One of the things we want to do is put into protocol what we do and when we do it. So it's important for us to develop a protocol. And last but not least, it's the 4 half-days for staff professional development. We built that into the calendar this year because we know that it's important for our teachers to have the time. So that's part of what you'll see K-5. Now let me go back to something. In April, I proposed to the community that we have 2 assistant superintendents. I was very strong on that because I knew the work that we were going to be doing. And so K-5 is Mr. Kravitz, 612 is Dr. Hassler. So you'll see a lot of similarities. They're going to align the curriculum to the state standards, develop common assessments, formalize a process for reviewing student progress. This is different. Review the academy program. So we have an academy program that we offer our high school students. If you failed a class, you can go to school in the evening and you could make that, you can get that credit back. One of the things that we want to take a look at is how efficient is that program? How cost efficient is it? And is there another way that we can deliver this to students? And can we use the academy for not just credit recovery? So that is going to be the work that Dr. Hausser is going to be doing at the secondary level. Our plan is to make recommendations to the board sometime in February or March because we know that that's budget season. So we want to make sure that we're giving the board and the community updates on this. The other thing that we want to do is implement the use of Naviance for current 6th and 9th graders. Let me just get a glass of water here. So most of you are familiar with Naviance. It's a program that we use that allows our students and their families to see where the student is as far as their relation to graduation. One of the things that we want to change is we think 6th graders should be thinking about high school and college. And that should start in 6th grade. So we're going to take a look at using Naviance in 6th grade for our 6th grade students to start self-motivating, right? We often think that we have to tell kids what they need. I think it's really important for kids to start deciding what they want to do. Not every student has that opportunity with their parents, and so we felt it was incumbent upon the school district to do that for our 6th graders. Start thinking about what you want to do in 6th grade and the impact, right? What you take in 7th and 8th grade, if you take an accelerated class, has a very big impact when you get to high school. So it's that thinking that we want to change, as well as our 9th graders, and start talking to our 9th graders about college and what do you need to do in order to get into the college that you want to get into. And then schedule a curriculum night, very similar to what you saw at the elementary. The difference here is, though, that their curriculum night is really going to be focused on pathways for our high school students, which is something that it's very important for our parents and our community to think about. We need to utilize a system for tracking earned college credits. One of the things that's really important for our school is to have a profile. And in order to have a profile, we need to have all of the updated information. And one of the things that we don't have streamlined is how many students get how many college credits. One of the things I talked about when I first became superintendent was that I wanted every student to at least have one college credit. And so I think we've moved beyond that, but I think it's going to be important to have that data, right? We go back to what is the data of Monrore-Woodbury. So it's important for us to have this information. Another big thing that we're doing at the secondary is really looking at our academic schedule. We have 9 periods. Is that the best way for us to instruct our students? And so there is going to be work being done, again, at the secondary to take a look at that. And that's going to include staff and students and parents. But we really need to rethink how we're educating our students. Does it make sense for kids to have 9 periods a day, 42 minutes? Is that the best way to educate them? Is that how colleges do it, right? Colleges, you don't take 9 periods a day. You take 4 or 5 classes, and then you go to your next day, you have a different set of classes. Is that the best way? So again, we're going to be investigating what's the best way to have our academic schedule. The other thing we want to talk about is develop summer programs for students considering accelerated classes. So we have open enrollment in some of our classes, but the truth of the matter is that the district it's important for us as a district to provide the summer program to kids who are thinking about taking an accelerated class. Maybe they don't have the skill, right? The one thing we don't want to do is change the rigor of the class. So in order to not change the rigor of the class, it's important that these students are prepared to go into these accelerated classrooms, right? And again, present the findings and making adjustments. Again, the same thing, 4.5 days for professional development. Lastly is, we met with our building administrators, but we also met with our district-wide administrators, and we talked about what are some of the things that we can do district-wide. And so screening, onboarding new students to the district, it should be the same experience for every student that comes to our schools. And then lastly, making sure that our data is in the correct format. So aligning all of our forms and documentation to support students, looking at our AIS forms, looking at our special education forms, and then our 504. So these are the deliverables, as we call them, and these are the action steps that we're going to be taking. Now I'm going to go to goal number 2. Remember that our last year, the goal number 2 was family engagement, but from that family engagement survey, we came up with that safety was the number 1 priority. So we've switched. Number 2 is now going to be safety assessment and enhancement, and Patrick's going to speak to that.
Great, thank you, Elsie. So really I would say the goal number 2, the nucleus of it, what it really revolves around is doing a safety audit or safety assessment district-wide to evaluate everything about our safety program, the policies that we have, staffing levels, how we lay out the buildings, the physical infrastructure of our buildings, all those sorts of things with an eye towards improving safety, obviously. So, bullet number 1 was engage an external safety consultant, which we've done. We're going to partner with Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, who has an excellent safety division or unit. They've actually started to do a little bit of training with the district. We had one of the representatives, the coordinator of that unit, come and speak to our administrators at our admin retreat. We had the same gentleman, Frank Gugliari, come on opening day and speak to the entire staff, provide some training on safety, emphasize some of the things that are really important, paramount to safety. So we haven't really started that process. I anticipate we'll start it probably next month, and it'll probably take, I would say, through the end of the calendar year to conduct the on-site portion of the safety assessment. And it's a comprehensive process, looking at our procedures, evaluating buildings. They'll probably spend, I would say, anywhere from 3 to 4 days at each building, that kind of thing. When we did the contract with them, we evaluated it and we costed it out as the max. So it can be less. A smaller building obviously would take less time than a building like the high school. But basically what we said is we want to do everything. We want you to really evaluate every component of our safety program. So based on that audit, we'll have a report. We'll then evaluate and prioritize, the items that, the recommendations that are listed in the report. I have here evaluate cost and feasibility. That's one of the things we always have to consider, because more is always better, not always better, but typically we had more safety officers, more safety enhancements to the buildings, but we have to evaluate, the cost and the efficacy of those things, the return on investment of those items. So that would be sort of the second part of that, evaluating the feasibility, the cost. A couple of things that we actually have done, I would call these complete. We listened to some of our staff, some of our unions about things that were important to them. We kind of evaluated some of these things ourselves in terms of our facilities, and we've actually taken the step of installing new classroom locks on all the doors and in all the school buildings. The high school had the appropriate kind of locks for 3 of the levels. The D level did not. So I'm happy to report we have 6 of the schools done. We did that over the summer. And the middle school, I believe, those locks were backordered. We talked about this on opening day, but those are now in. So we'll start to work on the middle school, replacing those classroom door locks. And the idea was the locked classroom door is an incredibly effective safety and security deterrent if there's an intruder in a building. And we wanted to have every classroom door be able to be locked with the push of a button or turn of a knob. We had a lot of locks that required a key, which is, problematic for any number of reasons. You have to have the key. You have to be able to use the key. Some of the keys you had to actually lock from the outside, so that's not really the safest option in a crisis. So that was one of those things that we prioritized, and we did it over the summer. The other big piece of this facilities related was the door access control. So that is the sort of computer-controlled unlock to a door. And the benefit of that is it does away with the need to prop doors open, to leave doors unlocked. There's a kind of a human tendency. If the door closes and it locks, I might put a piece of wood, a block of wood in there, something like that to keep it open. So we've gone out and we evaluated, all the buildings and identified, the number of critical doors that they would want this door access control on. We met with the administrators, the building principals. So that's another item that will enhance safety. It's in process. Unfortunately, some of the equipment related to that is back ordered, due to, supply chain issues. But that's in process. We know where the doors are going to be. In fact, we've started to replace some doors. There were doors that were in really bad shape. So we've actually ordered doors to, number one, repair the door, and number two, install the door access control. Security vestibules, enhancements to those that we've sort of evaluated that and determined that should really be part of the capital program. Some of those are bigger ticket items. They're a little bit more complex. But that's something we're evaluating and considering. Additional security cameras, that's another measure. We've identified locations in the district, and we're going to install, or we have some proposals, install those, I would say, in the next couple of months, in all likelihood, additional cameras. Just reinforcing safety awareness and adherence to protocols and behavior. We've tried to emphasize that safety largely is behavioral. We want people to close and lock doors, not chalk doors open, all those kinds of things. Wear your badge, that's something that we've been emphasizing, and we're going to continue to emphasize as the year rolls out. I mentioned the safety presentation that we had at the beginning of the year. We initiated the credential exchange program at all our schools. We had it at the high school last year. And I anticipate from the safety audit, we'll have other procedural enhancements. So that's the idea. We're going to roll this audit out with the idea for improving the safety program in the district.
And we started that before we move on. We started with the presenter came to the administrative retreat. So we started with him in July.
Right.
And then felt that he was very appropriate and that he would be very, very beneficial to our staff. So then we brought him back on our first day.
On opening day, that's right. So we're going to work closely with Frank Gugliari on, all these matters.
Yeah. And then we're going to go to goal number 3, which is the referendum planning and initiation of the capital project. And Patrick, do you want to speak to that as well?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just mention December 6, 2022 is the referendum vote date. So that's sort of I would say, the finish line, but then the beginning of the next phase of the project. Where we are right now, in terms of the action steps and deliverables, finalizing the scope of work with corresponding cost estimates. So we've had several meetings with our architects, our construction managers. I've sent some correspondence out to the Capital Project Advisory Committee fairly recently, because, when we look at our building conditions survey, we consider everything everybody wants, the number is very big, right? And so what we need to do is sort of whittle that down, and we've done that using our guiding principles that we've discussed. So the first one really was health safety. The second was improving educational outcomes for students. I think this third was avoiding imminent failure. There was one related to energy savings and operational savings. There was one related to parity amongst the buildings, and I think the final one dealt with finances. So we've used those to, kind of tailor and prioritize our list. We're at the point where we've done that to a large degree, and we've sort of overlaid the financial or fiscal plan over that. And we do that by saying, here's the project timeline, here's the schedule. Based on that schedule, this is when we would need cash, so there's a cash flow analysis. This is when borrowing would have to occur to meet those financial obligations. And then in conjunction with that, we have to think about how we're retiring existing debt. So we've talked a lot about that. There's sort of like 3 break points where existing debt will essentially be paid off. So we're trying to synchronize and coordinate our spending and our borrowing with when that occurs. The use of the capital reserve, we've talked about that. We have $13.4 million in our reserve right now. I'm hopeful in the next few years we'll actually be able to contribute more to that, because the capital reserve is very beneficial to these kind of projects, because not only do you not have to borrow, you're actually able to receive building aid on those capital reserve expenditures. So there's a leverage effect. So if we spend $1 million from our capital reserve, we're actually able to spend $4 million on construction, because the other $3 million is building aid. So it's incredibly important. It's really the way to go is to actually build that reserve, for your capital project. So, the other piece of this that we have to coordinate is the closeout of projects. So you don't actually receive any building aid until we do a certificate of substantial completion with our architects, file paperwork with the state ed department, final cost reports, and then we would receive building aid. So there's a lot of moving parts in this system. But that's really where we are right now. With the objective was to minimize the impact on the local share, we'll call it, on the budget, which is basically, I have up here, debt service minus state aid. So that's the local share. So the next steps would be the seeker evaluation, and seeker stands for State Educational Quality Review Act. So it's a state law that requires us to analyze and assess environmental impact of projects. So type 2 action is basically minimal or no environmental impact. When you're replacing something in kind, there's usually no impact. So we'd have to do that at our next board meeting on October 12th. The public relations and informational campaign will go into high gear very soon, definitely right after that. We'll do district-wide mailer with project information. We'll do meetings, a roadshow with videos to explain the project and the financial plan. Again, December 6th being the referendum vote date. And after that, the next steps would be to enter the design phase, where architects, construction managers would start to do specific plans and specifications. Right now, we're in a conceptual state where we know what we want to do, we have good cost estimates, but these specific plans and specifications would then be designed and prepared thereafter, and ultimately submitted to the State Education Department for review and approval. Once we have that back, then we go through a bid process. So it's very involved and can take a long time, actually.
I think Carol's talking about doing a Crusader chat sometime in November.
Right.
As part of the whole, making sure that people understand what we're doing, but giving, the community as many opportunities to ask questions and give us an opportunity to present to the community as well.
Right.
I think you called it a roadshow?
Roadshow. Yeah.
Roadshow.
The roadshow,
Yeah.
right?
Something to that effect, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's
You
it.
good?
Yeah.
So I
good.
want to go back to something because I didn't mention it, and I think it's really important when we're talking about data. It's not just the use of data. I had an opportunity to go to a conference, and I was very much impressed by a school district by the name of Baldwin. And they did a presentation on very similar demographics as ours, and they did a presentation on data as well. And what they did was, they've worked with Frontline, and I've spoken to Bargoff about that, but what they did was that they were able to create a data dashboard. What was really interesting about the data dashboard was, I mean, it's taken them about 10 years, but the data dashboard was up to date, so it was live information. Even more important was the fact that it allowed them to have a predictability. So they took a look at a student, and it would say, this student might not graduate on time. So what that information was, it allowed them to take a look at students before it became an issue and start making plans for that student to help them graduate on time. So even though we're doing this work, I think an aspiration for us is to get there as well, right? To be able to use data, live data, and to be able to make changes for our students quickly, but also to be able to predict what students we have and what are some of the issues that they may have based on how they've performed already. So that's something that I wanted to share with the community as well and the board. So I'm going to what's next? I think you're going to have Dr. Hassler and Mr. Kravitz. They're going to present our report cards. That's what's next on our, move that here. The 3 through 8 assessment. What's been interesting is that for the past, I would say, 5 or 6 years, we've had students opt out. Very fortunate this past year that we had a good number of students taking the test. Our Regents results are also important, so that's going to be the next step for us, as well as we'll constantly keep the board and the community updated. You know, I talked about all of these different things that we're going to be looking at, and so the goal is to present prior to our final budget, because I think some of the things that we may recommend may have financial impact. Questions?
I have a couple. My first is a request, actually,
Okay.
that I know we've brought up in the past, and I know it's always a work in progress, but as you brought up the student profile, I quickly went to our website, and
It's not up there.
It's not up there.
We're working
So,
on it.
I know that, having college-age students that are getting ready to apply, that's one of the first things that colleges will go to look for, because it gives a snapshot of our district. So I think those applications go out, Jenna, by like November 1st, so I have a little bit of time, but if that could get updated, I know that would be a good priority.
I'm looking at Carol, and she's saying yes.
I will say we've been working on it.
Okay.
The content, new content is coming in. I'm working on the design piece, and so we are collaborating. It is a work in progress. We know it's a priority.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then I had a question about the data, that if we have any, which I'm guessing that we do, but when you mentioned about the honors open enrollment classes, have we had any data that's been collected as to the success of that program? Because now you're looking at the possibility of adding summer programs that would, I'm assuming, kind of tie into that. Like, so if I'm understanding it correctly, you're looking for the possibility of, if my student weren't eligible to take the next level math class because they needed the math class prior. I know Dr. Hassler sometimes talks about it being consecutive. Is that what you're looking for? Like, they would be able to take that class over the summer?
They would take a skills class, so it
Okay.
wouldn't be necessarily they take the class. It's really about the skills that the student needs to be successful. So let me answer your first question, which is, do we have any data? We actually do, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our 7th graders were allowed to go into 8th grade math accelerated.
Okay.
Open enrollment. And so we do have data, which is really good data, but they'll talk about it, so.
Okay, next month?
Yes, next month, he'll talk about that.
Next month is the Regents results.
But we should talk about the data.
Okay.
Well, actually, it would be part of the Regents results,
Okay,
because you're talking about the 8th grade students who took the Regents. So yes, you will have an opportunity to speak about that.
okay.
Sorry, Dr. Hassler.
No, the reason, well, yes, the Regents results at the middle level were consistent with past year's Regents results, but I think that the open enrollment data that you're speaking about specifically is, when we say open enrollment, it's making sure that an expanded audience of students has the opportunity to be able to take accelerated courses.
Correct.
So I think one of the questions is, are we truly providing opportunities for all students to have access to these courses? And what are the profile of the students that are taking advantage of that? And so I think that that's one of the things that we need to dig into. So what Mrs. Rodriguez is saying is, by offering some of these courses over the summer, are we then expanding opportunities for more kids, where a student may say, you know something, English 9 Honors is an open enrollment course, but I don't know that I'm ready to take an accelerated curriculum like that. But right off the bat, then the question is that truly open enrollment? If you could potentially have a population of kids who say, I don't know that I'm ready for that. What we don't want to do is make modifications in the curriculum itself, but what we'd like to do is to be able to create more of an opportunity for kids, to give them that skill set that Mrs. Rodriguez was talking about, to be successful in that course.
So it's kind of like a prep course.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yes.
Correct.
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
It is.
So I mean, my next presentation is on like the Regents results, and I'll talk about, one of the things that I speak about is the number of kids who sat for the various exams and how that impacted the assessment data and everything else. But I think another phase of that is truly looking at the students that took advantage of the open enrollment opportunities, and are we seeing it being truly accessible for a broader audience of kids? And I think that those are the questions that we're asking ourselves now that we're in, a few years' worth of this opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Got a essentially quick question. Naviance, you said, for sixth grade, are there other districts that have leveraged it for that year as well?
I believe so, yes.
And
There are other districts who have done that, and I think the concept we are introducing obviously with the Mrs. Rodriguez and middle school administration is goal setting for the kids at the early age. And once they realize that what is the possibilities, sixth grade kid might not be, or student might not be ready to make a career, but at least understanding of what are the opportunities while they are with us. And ultimately, the goal is to start introduction at the sixth grade, but by the time they are in the ninth grade, they may have done 2-3 years of goal setting already in Naviance, and they are clear in their mind of what direction they want to go, take the advantage of some of our really good offerings from high school, get some AP courses or get some college level courses that Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned, and get some of the courses while they are with us, so then possibly they can reduce their time in college and get the degree and get out quickly.
Yeah.
That's really the concept that we are introducing, but again, it's the first year, so I'm sure it will run its course, but that's the direction we want to go.
And I think the other thing is that this all happened because Dr. Hassler talked about his son's choices in ninth grade. And it led us into a conversation in cabinet about, does every child in our district have a Dr. Hassler at home who can say, here's a pathway that I think that you should be going? And so that kind of took us into, every student should have access to the fact that these are your choices. Now, what decisions our students make? But we should be, as a school district, making sure that every student understands the implications of their decisions. So that's why we said, we want to make sure that we start in sixth grade, because you have to start thinking about, do I want to take an accelerated class in seventh and eighth grade? If you don't think about that in sixth grade, you're behind by the time you get to high school. So that's why we said sixth grade was really important.
okay.
Can I go back really quickly to the open enrollment piece? The Regents piece is only a slice of open enrollment. So like the next presentation that I'm doing is on Regents results, but remember, some courses that we have open enrollment for don't culminate in a Regents exam.
Right.
So we talked about some of the AP courses and things like that. So the presentation, I'll touch on some of the courses and the number of kids that took the Regents exams and the results and things like that, but I think there's an even bigger conversation related to open enrollment, because it's not only Regents level courses that, like the middle school, seventh grade accelerated, which then leads into
The eighth grade.
algebra, right, which culminate in a Regents exam. But when we talked about open enrollment, it also was for certain AP courses and things like that, which don't culminate in a Regents, which wouldn't be part of that presentation. So
That would be
the
separate.
open enrollment discussion is a big one.
It sounds like two presentations for you.
Yes, it does, yes.
Suzanne?
Yeah. When you talk about advising our students of their choices, does that include vocational choices? Good.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the purpose of really talking about it in sixth grade, because, I mean, for those board members that have students who've applied to college, you build your resume for whatever pathway it is that you're choosing moving forward, but really, for some kids, they're building some of those, between even something as simple as clubs that they participate in, sports that they participate in, volunteer hours that they do. You start to build that resume long before you're really even starting to, really document and plan for college, like sophomore, junior year. That work really should be starting at a much earlier level.
I agree.
And kind of piggybacking off that as well, is there an extra consideration regarding kids who may not have English as their first language? Is there anything to be considered there, or?
So our our ENL students?
Yeah.
We do. I think we take a look at all our students. It really depends upon the student's ability, right? So some students come with, from another country, but they've gone to school there. Some students come to our school and they've never had formal education. So it really is individualized to that student.
Great.
But
All right.
we don't, I think one of the things that we've been focused on is not saying, okay, you can't get there.
Sure.
The question becomes, what's your pathway? You hear that that's the terminology that we use. What's the path for the student? And so by using Naviance, the student really has part of the discussion about what's his or her pathway. And it's regardless whether the student is a student with disabilities or an ENL student, I think it's important that every student have that opportunity.
Okay, yes, that's what I'm gonna make sure it's not a generalized approach. which
No,
I guess
no,
it
no,
can't
no.
be.
No, and I mean, to give an example of that, we had talked about Naviance being rolled out at the sixth grade level and at the ninth grade level. The course that we're looking at for the rolling out of Naviance in sixth grade is sixth grade seminar, which is a course that every single sixth grader takes in the building, regardless of program that they're in.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
I just had a question about the Naviance for sixth graders, and it sounds wonderful. I wish someone had showed me all the choices you had available when you were in sixth grade, because I still don't know what I want to do, except that I want to retire.
sure, yeah.
But I just want to make sure, is there a consideration of the social aspects of it? And by that I mean, while it is great, I'm definitely for it, they're in sixth grade and they're kids, and I feel like the world is just pushing down on these kids sooner and sooner and sooner. And I just want to make sure that we look at that end of it too, that it's not too much too soon for kids.
Sure. Well, and I think Mrs. Rodriguez spoke about curriculum night, and, the model of a curriculum night at the elementary level versus the model of the curriculum night at the secondary level is going to be a little bit different, where, at the elementary level, we're rolling out a new math program, so that might be something that they would speak about at curriculum night. But at the secondary level, the students are very quickly finding themselves having to make certain choices, even in sixth grade. Sixth grade is the beginning of what foreign language, what world language am I going to take in seventh grade? So it's trying to find ways to make sure that when our families are confronted with these decisions, that they're armed with the full scope of information to be able to make informed decisions, not, when their child comes home, obviously they're part of the decision-making and what their interest might be, but also, we as parents are also, we talked about the financial literacy program at the secondary level, where, I know that that's something that I've heard from parents specifically who would be very interested as their child is getting ready to go off to college, for them to potentially take a course like that. Maybe the students may not necessarily be as interested, but something when we get out and we're speaking about that might be something that a parent may say, I didn't know that the high school had that course available, and that's something that I would like you to be able to participate in. So at the secondary level, that's kind of the goal of some of the, the curriculum nights that we're planning, is how do we, the department chairs go into the classes and do presentations to the students, and the students are the ones that make the course requests when we're getting ready to build the schedule. But it's not just the students, it's also the parents, to be able to assist in some of that planning.
And there's so many choices. I think that's what's really interesting, especially at the high school, that I don't think that everybody knows what are the choices that kids have. Like, for example, if you go to C-Tech, you could go and you could get your pilot license. And I'll talk to parents and they're like, really? Yes. And I think it's more about information. We certainly don't want to inundate a sixth grader who's just going through, middle school. But we also want to make sure, you know, again, I go back to Dr. Hassler, who talked about all the things, all the options that he had, that he was talking about, and decisions that he made based on information that he knew, that we felt like, no, everybody should know this information, and everybody should make a decision. And even if a child doesn't have a parent who can help them, then maybe the child can help themselves. And I think that's what we're looking at, is to make sure that we build our students so that they have as much information, and our parents as much information as they need, and make good decisions.
And I assume that that would beget a significant investment in the guidance side of.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Of the district.
Yep, agreed.
I have a question. Naviance has the capability to do what we're looking to do, and how are we bringing all this to educating our students and our families to how to use Naviance? There's a lot to navigating Naviance and what the capabilities are, and it's definitely geared more towards secondary, so how would we modify that at the lower levels?
So I think that, did you want to say
Oh, go
something?
ahead, go ahead.
So I think that one of the things Dr. Hassler talked about was the fact that every student in sixth grade has that seminar course. So you would start, I would assume that we would start with our students, right? Talking to them about Naviance. I think one of the things that we know, kids today are a lot savvier. It's probably more difficult for the adults to sort of get on. So step one would be with our students. And then I think there would be some rollout for the parents to have an understanding of how it works.
And at the middle level, one of the things that's required of students, not just in sixth grade, but sixth, seventh, and eighth, like Part 100 of Commissioner's Regulations is about like giving kids exposure to a variety of things. They do it in family and consumer science, for example, and they have to do an interest inventory to determine potentially what are some of the things that they may want to pursue in making some of these decisions moving forward. So I think being able to have some of these things in place at the beginning would help them sort of build Naviance moving forward in that way, if that makes any sense. I mean,
I understand.
Naviance has the capability to be able to do a lot of these, like, interest inventories and things like that. So it's kind of, you know, it's not going to be a one-year thing. I think that this is going to be a multi-year process of how can we fully develop a system to be able to support the students.
I think Bargoff wanted to say
It
something.
will be very basic introduction of Naviance to sixth grade, if that's what you're asking. They are not going to be same as what we taught in ninth or 10th grade, because it's just the very basic steps. We also have to work with the administrators and also the teachers who are going to take this underneath, along with the guidance counselor. So first year, we would expect that it will be a very basic rollout. As the staff and adults basically get more proficient in Naviance, it will get better and better. But it's going to be very basic introduction of the Naviance to the incoming sixth graders for this year, and then obviously we'll make it better as the year goes through. One of the thought that we understood, Naviance is now acquired by Power School last couple of years. So it is certainly making it easier from a data flow perspective. We realized over the summer that there were some new APIs were created between Power School and Naviance, and credit to our high school guidance chair, she was on it over the summer, Ms. Alicia. So we are learning as the program is, or the technology is getting better, but also at the same time introducing this concept to our younger learners. And ultimately, the way I feel, it's equity to all our kids. Like, we are providing the same equitable access to all our students regardless of their background, whether they have Dr. Hessler as a parent or anybody else.
So you're mentioning the sixth grade focus, but currently seventh and eighth graders have access to a
They will,
Naviance account.
yeah, they will
have
continue
it.
to do that.
Correct.
Yes,
Right.
thank you. Yeah.
I think one thing that you guys did a great job on is, I know the pandemic, there's a lot of negatives to it, but we relied on the state to do assessments in many cases, and I think the fact that the state basically took that away, what you guys have done to evaluate whether you continued with only state assessments or brought it up to a more modern system that is more beneficial to our students. I think you guys have done an outstanding job of you know, you had to reinvent the wheel anyway, and I think
Right.
what you've done to improve that is really impressive, and I love the idea of at least introducing the concept of setting academic goals for the student to take ownership of that. Whether it sinks in day one or not, we all know how that works, but I think that introducing that behavior change is that they're responsible and that they can influence. And then the things that you mentioned earlier to monitor and to make sure that you're giving the tools and you're providing the administrators with the tools to help them achieve the goals that they believe they want to achieve. I think, to me, this is, you guys have done an excellent job of taking what we relied heavily on the state to give us some pieces and really expanded that to benefit our students. It's very impressive.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn the floor over to our student representative.
Just before I give my report, I just wanted to say that I do love the idea of introducing goals early because there are so many opportunities that I could have had if I had known my interests sooner. And I wish I had known in middle school how much my grades in 7th and 8th grade accelerated courses would have affected my GPA in middle school. And I even remember in 8th grade, I decided not to continue with Expand because I wanted to take the college readiness course or the college course and learn my interests. And I remember learning Naviance and learning what my skills were there. So I really enjoyed having Naviance in 8th grade. So I love the idea of introducing those goals even earlier in 6th grade because I remember the impact of my decisions in as early as 7th and 8th grade. But as for my report, in the past 2 weeks, I've been able to meet with students at Pine Tree and North Main Elementary School, the high school administrators, and today I was excited to visit the first graders at Sapphire Elementary School. Students are excited to get back in the building and continue their learning. The elementary school students were very eager to tell me about the socialization they're having this year with their friends, and both Pine Tree and North Main students were very excited to tell me about their class's incentive programs, with North Main's ticket systems in some of their classrooms that award students with prizes for good behavior, and Pine Tree's Heart program, which is school-wide and is actively teaching and encouraging them how to be kind, empathetic students. Not only were all the students I spoke to extremely intelligent, kind, and respectful, but it was amazing to see how excited they were about learning these skills. North Main students especially mentioned to me their love of their library and reading, and how they even wish they had more books to read in class. The Sapphire students also expressed their love for reading, so this was a very common theme throughout all the schools I visited from the students. And I was very impressed with how the younger students were able to articulate some of the struggles in school that they're having. One thing students mentioned to me was their difficulty focusing and concentrating this year after all the freedom they had with virtual learning. And something they wish their teachers knew more about was how when they're fidgeting or playing with their hands, it's actually helping them concentrate because they're just so excited to be in school, in a classroom, surrounded by friends. And as for the high school, homecoming week is coming up, and student council is currently working on theme day ideas leading up to the dance. And administration is also working to get high school students more involved this year, and a great way to do that is through extracurriculars. So on parent night tomorrow, there's going to be a club fair where clubs can encourage students to become more involved. And I know personally I'll be trying to get students to join the Youth and Government Club. So it's great to see the schools really back to life this year, and I think students are going to have some great activities to look forward to.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have committee reports. Do we want to go around?
So we had a meeting scheduled for policy, but it got postponed, so we're in the process of rescheduling that meeting. We had some conflicts this week as well. And as far as the goals, again, outstanding. I say this statement a lot, in our private meetings. It's like there's probably not a single board member that would ever make it through the first round of an interview for any position in the school. So we all often joke like, we're in charge, but like I said, we wouldn't make it through it. And what the administration has done with the post-COVID is just simply amazing. It's really impressive. And I think, unlike some schools, I think Monrore-Woodbury is taking the post-COVID experience and really capitalizing on it and making it really beneficial for our students. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
Your policy meetings have been set for the year?
They were set.
They have to be published on the website?
Yep.
And I want to thank Mrs. McCleary. Before the meeting, she shared with me that some of the dates were missing. So I already talked with with Taryn, and she's going to contact the chairs to make sure that those all get formally published, so thank you. Other committee chairs? Anthony? Stacy? Oh, Stacy, I'm sorry.
Visitation? I'd like to think that I'd make it past the first round of interviews.
Maybe.
I am in education.
Maybe.
Hold that. But Visitation Committee met with Ms. Soto at the high school. She was very excited to share with us her reimagining or rebranding of the guidance suite, to make it a more inviting environment for students for all ranges, not just a place where they come when things aren't going too well, but a place where, they could go to explore colleges, to make sure they're on the right track and to move themselves forward. She also was very proud of her free book vending machine, which I thought was really cool. Think of it as a snack machine that dispenses literature, that students can punch in their ID code, grab a book on their way out the door to the buses, and I thought that was pretty neat. And we also wrapped up seeing the study rooms that were created in the library for small groups that they could get together on their lunch hour and do group work or study together. So overall, it was a very nice visit. Our next meeting will be at the middle school with Mr. Berger on October 19th, and that's about it.
Is there an update on the signage for the athletic complex?
I thought that Patrick had addressed that at the last meeting.
We had a visitation meeting, so
Right, but that did not come up.
I mean,
no update.
I can provide an update. We've reached out to LAN, and we've told them to go forward. We're waiting on the QR codes, and there was a little bit of a holdup with that. So that's in process. We're waiting for them to provide almost like a proof, digital version of that. And once that's done, we would then have it fabricated, the signs fabricated, so
thank you.
it's happening.
For the audit committee, all of the dates have been set for the year. All of the invitations were sent out, and the next upcoming meeting is on 10/11. And then, Anthony, do you have any?
For the task force for the capital project, we're looking to have a meeting. I think we're going to try to have one tomorrow, if not, then early next week, but
Right on.
we'll have more updates after that.
Yep.
Okay. Any other updates? Reports by board and central office. We'll start with Dawn.
I just want to thank Ms. Rowan-Delson for your very comprehensive report from all the schools. It was great. Thank you for sharing all that information, and welcome to our new staff. Hope everyone's year is going great.
It was a great presentation. Thank you. That's it for me.
It was a great presentation, and I'd like to thank Elsie and the rest of the administration for the update on the goals. Everybody is off to a wonderful school year, and I'm looking forward to updates on homecoming. And I'd also like to say my thoughts and prayers are with everyone in the path of Hurricane Ian.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
I'd like to thank all the building administrators for their open houses. Had the pleasure to attend 5 of them, so they were all great. I think the key point is they were all basically the same, right? You tailored it well to your students, but the information that was provided about lunches and all of that was across the board, so it was nice to see that continuity there. So I appreciate all your hard work and late nights and going into all that in your teams.
Thank you for all the presentations this evening, and the first day of school was a great success. I want to thank everybody for inviting us out. I was able to visit each of the buildings, even if it was for a short period of time. I apologize that I got lost in the pre-K classroom, Ms. Caldwell, but, I'm a little biased there. But it was amazing to see all the kids back in action, and I hope that we'll be able to attend some more great events that are coming up. And I'm going to echo with Jenna. I know she's only sat in that seat for a short period of time, but it's been awesome. So congratulations, and keep up the great work.
Have a good night.
Thanks for everything. Great start to the school year, and have a great night.
Quick thank you, Ms. Cook in the background. Thank you very much for the open house in North Main. My daughter is still loving your library, still asking me about it. We're not going to get that at our house, so we got to take her there, so thank you. Mr. Cotto, Mr. Davis, you guys are awesome. Thank you very much for spending time out of that very busy night with me to walk me around and show me some stuff that I was not aware of previously, so I do appreciate your time. Thank you. And have a good night.
Thank you. Margo?
Open houses were really well received by parents. Thank you all the administrators for a great job. Big shout out to high school help desk students. Typically, the beginning of the school year for technology is just an interesting time where everybody brings their devices. But these students who are now seniors stayed since last year with us. Really did a remarkable job of supporting these devices. Also, the librarian, technology department, and TAs. Thank you for all your help. Finally, we are, I would say, in the third year, we are catching a really breather, and it's still September.
Lori?
I was just, again, like everyone else, very impressed with what Jenna had to say this evening. I think you represent not only our senior class very well, but all of our students very well. So thank you for that. Very insightful. Have a good night.
Same for me, and I think also from the perspective of open house, it was great being in person and really being able to see the classrooms and the staff, which has been fantastic. Thank you to the building administrators for putting that together. But, it's good from a parent perspective, I think, of being able to experience firsthand what your kids are seeing, so that was awesome. Jenna, I'd like to take it a step further. I would like to officially request that you participate in all committees that I have to run this year. So just let it be known. Jenna, okay, thank you.
She has a deer in headlights.
You know what it was for me, Jenna? I feel like when you finished, like we were supposed to clap or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like clap, not clap, but no, that was great. Just a reminder that PTA meetings are in full swing. In fact, there are a couple that just started across the district, one at CV, one at Pine Tree. So if you haven't yet joined any of your building PTAs or SEPTA and you're capable and willing to do so, please consider doing that. Have a great night.
Patrick?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank and acknowledge Orange and Rockland Utility for a STEM grant to North Main Elementary, and wish everyone a nice evening.
Thank you. Jenna?
Thank you, and have a good night.
Tara? Elsie?
I also want to say, Jenna, that what's impressive is that you are a reflection of our school district, and it's really good to have you sitting at the table and speaking the way that you do and focusing on all the things. So we're very, very grateful to have you. And yes, it's only been a short period of time, but you are truly awesome. And I also want to thank the staff, the teachers, all of our building administrators and leaders, and everyone who works in the district for a great opening. You did an amazing job, and it's exciting to be back here in person, and I feel like this is going to be an awesome year. So thank you.
Thank you. Smith Clove Open House, but rocked. It was great. I want to thank the cabinet for the goals. I think great job, a lot of detail. I think we really spent a nice amount of time going through those. Great questions by the board members as well. I've been getting a lot of very positive feedback about the start of school from students. I have some in my household, but then they have a lot of friends. They felt very aligned with what's going on, the energy in the building. They were really excited. They get up and they want to go to school. They look forward to it. So that's been great. And I just want to wish everyone, and Jenna, you did a great job. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I would just want to wish everyone a great rest of the week, month, and see you at the next meeting. Thank you. So, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.